You know, better news now. You know, all these welcome to country ceremonies and all those acknowledgements of traditional owners, you know, Qantas land, all that kind of stuff, that even many Aborigines now say they're sick of. Even Noel Pearce said it was overdone. These ceremonies that divide us by race, treating non-Aborigines as strangers to the land we were actually born on. Well, there's good news. Finally, one church, the Presbyterian Church, has decided these ceremonies are not just unhelpful, but unchristian. The Presbyterian Church, at its 3-yearly National Assembly, has decided that the wording of the welcome to country and acknowledgement of country practices almost invariably carries overtones of an Indigenous spirituality inconsistent with Christian belief. As Christians, we have to avoid wording that suggests final ownership of land is vested in people rather than with the Creator. And here's the key part: welcome to country and acknowledgement of country practices are inappropriate for public worship, with a call to worship centres on God. Now, I was stunned because I thought the churches had given in completely to the left's new race agenda, even backing Labor's plan for the voice, many of them, that divides us by race in our constitution. Well, joining me to explain why the Presbyterian Church has made this ruling is Mark Powell, who's the Associate Minister at Cornerstone Presbyterian Community Church in Hobart. And I should stress, he's speaking for himself, not the whole church. Mark Powell, thank you so much for your time. Why are these welcome to countries and acknowledgement of country unchristian?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. It's great to be with you. Look, fundamentally, at the heart of the Christian message is a gospel of reconciliation. And it's vertical, as in it reconciles individuals to God, but it's also horizontal in that it reconciles people to one another. The problem with these Indigenous protocols, if we can call them that, is it divides us. It divides us fundamentally by race. And what that does is, in effect, in terms of Christian speak, is anti-gospel. So there's two big problems. First of all, it's tokenistic. But even more importantly, what the General Assembly of Australia resolved was that it was syncretistic. It was fundamentally incompatible with Christian doctrine. And if I can just spell that out a little bit, you see this in 3 ways. Number one, you've got smoking ceremonies, which are about, cleansing from evil spirits. Well, clearly for a Christian, we see that as achieved by Christ. But secondly, and this is more controversial amongst churches even and church schools today, is that welcome to country and acknowledgement of country also integrate an Indigenous pantheistic worldview. And what the General Assembly of Australia resolved was that that's incompatible with the worship of Christ, who is an exclusive saviour, who actually has, through his death and resurrection, achieved for us a reconciliation that none of these Indigenous protocols can achieve.
I also think, wouldn't it be true to say that in doing this, you are sticking up for the majority faith of most Aborigines, which is not things like smoking ceremonies, not things like we worship the rainbow serpent. It is Christianity. Christianity is still the majority faith of Aborigines. So why aren't churches sticking up for it? I think yours is now.
Yeah, look, you raise a really good point. And it's amazing to go back into Australian history and to see the enormous good that all of the churches did, and how many people, how many Indigenous people, whether they be Aboriginal or Torres Strait, they embraced the gospel of reconciliation. They embraced Christianity, and an overwhelming, still today, number of Aboriginal people would identify as Christian, especially in the Torres Strait. And they don't want to go back to the animistic and pantheistic beliefs of their forebears. They see in the gospel, it brings freedom, and it actually brings reconciliation with one another. In fact, Andrew, I interviewed an Aboriginal pastor, Pastor James Deegan, up in Wollongong just the other week, and he said what we really need to do as Aboriginals is not just say sorry, but say, I forgive you, because it's forgiveness that's going to bring true reconciliation.
Without a doubt, I think that point has been made by a couple of other people. Where is the forgiveness? Where's the end to this? Where is the reconciliation? Yeah. Mark Powell, and one last thing. Many of the arguments that you have put forward on against smoking ceremonies, against the recognition business, the acknowledgement of country, welcome to country, applies equally to the voice. Where is your church on the voice?
Yeah, interesting question, Andrew. And what our denomination decided was we're going to give people freedom. We're not going to tell them how to vote yes or how to vote no. That's a really important principle for the Presbyterian Church of Australia on these matters. But can I just say, and I'm going to speak personally now, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the Presbyterian Church. For me, the fundamental issue or problem with the voice is it's predicated on this false, unbiblical notion of intergenerational culpability or guilt, that somehow you've got to atone for white guilt. Now, Andrew, you don't have to atone for that. My own ancestors were Kanakas from the Solomon Islands. In some ways, in inverted commas, this is not technically true, but they were basically slaves brought over onto the sugarcane plantations over in Mackay. All of my family and ancestors, we're not trying to say to, European Australians or those that have come later, like my wife who's from Spain, you've got to apologise to me for things that happened in the long distance past. Everybody has to be responsible for what they're doing in this generation. And this generation has done an enormous amount of good for Aboriginal people. And there's an enormous amount of goodwill towards Aboriginal people. For me, I just don't think the voice is actually going to achieve the things that people like Marcia Langdon and Noel Pearson purport them to be. It's not going to close the gap.
It isn't. And you're already seeing it today. Again, it is actually dividing people by race rather than uniting.
Yeah.
Sold on a false premise there too. Reverend Mark Powell, thank you so much indeed for your time.